All right, everyone. We are back performing the World 2025. Give yourselves a big Zoom round of applause. Yes, yes, yes. If this is your first session of the day, how about you wave at us? If this is your second session of the day, please wave at us. If you've been here since the morning and it's your third cup of coffee, please wave at us. Yes. Thank you so much. If you missed what happened earlier, we had two amazing sessions. We had our opening session and we had Voices for Change, Playing for Change, Michael Sample. And now we're going to continue the ball rolling. But before we move there, let me get into gallery mode. Do we have any watch parties? Any watch parties? Raise your hand if you're hosting a watch party. You have a couple of friends, colleagues. Oh, there we go in Antwerp. We got the Antwerp watch party. Big shout out to everyone over there.
Where?
We have Sandy doing a watch party with Emily. They're watching together collectively. Mike, you're hosting a watch party? Nice. Anyone else want to share a watch party that they're doing? Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much. And watch parties are something that's going to be happening over the next 4 days as people congregate in many places around the world to view Performing the World collectively. We're going to keep filling those gaps. And yes, indeed, I said filling those gaps. Earlier, we traveled all around the world, from Africa to Nepal to Brazil, but now we're going right back to one specific place, and that is South Africa, for this beautiful, beautiful session that we're about to embark on, bringing to the Zoom stage all the way from South Africa, none other than Alison Polley-Green and their session, Filling the Gap, Equipping in Schools in an After-School Program in South Africa. Hey, Alison.
Hi, Des. Thank you so much for having us. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you to our audience and our panelists who are here this evening. I'm so excited. There's a watch party from Antwerp. It's my favorite city in Belgium, so big up to you guys. So this evening for us in South Africa, and probably different times all over the world for everyone else, we have come together. I have an amazing panel of people who I'm going to introduce to you in a second. But first, I wanted to just give some context of why we are having this conversation, particularly around filling the gaps, equipping in-school and after-school art programs. And to give a bit of context and history, when South Africa became democratic, when we shifted from our apartheid era, we instituted a really progressive constitution and a really liberal arts education policy. And the idea behind this policy that was all children at all schools across South Africa would have access, direct access to arts from primary school, from the first day at school, all the way up to high school. And as much as this is an incredible and progressive and democratic kind of idea, we know that there's a gap between policy and practice. And so the amazing people that I have in the room here today are really here to explore with me these gaps, this messiness, this meandering kind of journey that we're going to take to really understand what the work is and where it needs to be done. So without further ado, I'm going to just mention all the names of our panelists, and then I'm going to go around and ask each one of them to introduce themselves and give some context to the work that they are doing in their spaces. So we have with us Caryn Green, we have Tsholofelo Shounyane, Thembile Tshuma, and hopefully joining us a little bit later will be Sibahle Mtimkulu. But I would like to kick off by welcoming Caryn. Please take the stage and tell us a little bit about the work you do, Caryn.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Alison. So I'm Caryn Green. I'm the CEO of Sibikwa Arts Centre, And we are a community-based art center based in Benoni, which is in the city of Ekurhuleni, but actually fits within the greater Johannesburg region. So we are on the East Rand of that greater region. And quite close to the center, but also quite separated from the center if we are looking at Johannesburg as the center. And we were established in 1988. And as Alison was saying, we were established towards the end of the official apartheid and through the transition into democracy. And were established at that time really because the country was in such a tumultuous state and there was a need for hope and for safety and for a space for expression for young people. And it is quite interesting, sad, I suppose, that a lot of the principles and values and reasons for why we were established remain core to what we do. And really it being about trying to facilitate space for everybody to be able to participate in and benefit from arts and culture experiences. So we operate within three kind of core areas. The first is inclusive arts education, and really inclusive being about disability inclusion, but also inclusion of diversity within our country and our spaces. The second area that we work within is around professional development. And that space really about giving professional accredited training, mentorship, market access, or access to the industry to young people wanting to be creatives. And again, you know, all of this kind of responding to the landscape that we are in, where there are certain people and certain areas and certain communities that are still excluded. And the third area that we operate within is civic engagement. And in this space, we do festivals, events, we do some policy work, really about getting people together to speak to each other, to enjoy together, and to celebrate diversity. And I suppose there's 5 principles, particularly within our arts education space, but really across the board, that are important to us and that we try to achieve every day. The first is participation, so that everybody is able to participate freely in arts and culture. So a lot of our programs are offered at no cost, and we do an incredible amount of fundraising to ensure that that is possible. The second kind of principle that we operate on is inclusion, that everybody, no matter your background or your race or your ethnicity, are able to and are welcomed into the space. The third is around exposure. And in terms of our arts education and training in relation to this kind of principle is really to kind of expand the scope and the understanding that young people have about the possibilities within the arts and culture space, and seeing the creative industries as more than just acting on TV, for example, and really just exposing the very broad range of possibilities within the arts. The fourth principle that we look at is access, and I should have said that none of these are in a particular order. I think that they all kind of are important and rear their heads at different points. But access for us is really, really quite key. As I mentioned, the fact that so many people are excluded for whether it's economic issues or social issues or just the kind of landscape and the geography that we are in. And the fifth space is around, I suppose I'd say, development pathways. The idea that it takes a village, it takes an ecosystem to ensure that arts education is quality, and that there is a structure that supports the learning of each individual learner. So whether that be working with teachers, I'm sure we will get into it as the conversation goes, but we are very, in South Africa and in spaces that we are working, teacher training within the creative arts is not necessarily a priority. So a lot of the times you find that teachers are trained and qualified in a different subject, in a different discipline, and are kind of given the arts as a space that needs to be filled. So we do quite a lot of work around teacher training. Another really important thing for us is that part of the development of a young person is that parents are involved. And again, because of a kind of historical background, the households from within which our young learners are coming from are not necessarily nuclear. Many parents work long hours, multiple days, and are not necessarily around at home at the time when they could be reading with or playing with or doing homework with the kids. Or kids are living with grandparents or in households where there are many people, so not necessarily getting the attention. So yeah, I think that in a nutshell, that's what we do. And I'm sure that I can continue to expand as the conversation goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Caryn. And Caryn was talking about the Sibikwa Arts Centre, which is based, as she said, kind of on the outskirts of Johannesburg, which is South Africa's biggest city. I would like to continue with our introductions with moving on to Sibahle. Sibahle is not with us yet. She will hopefully join us, but she did send us a video which we are going to play, which introduces who she is and the work that she does, predominantly with youth at the Windybrow Arts Centre.
Hi, my name is Sibahle Mangena, and I am a theatre professional, a facilitator, a teacher, and a director. I use dance, drama, and song to tell stories and teach subjects in making learning fun again. My passion is to empower young kids to see beyond their circumstance, to know that the future is better and brighter and big. I work at the Windybrow Arts Centre in Hillbrow, an area with a tough reputation. But through our after-school program at the Windybrow Arts Centre, we are using the arts to transform lives. We take kids from witnessing crime and violence and give them a space to thrive. With singing, dancing, acting, and crafts and music. We are teaching them that they are capable of greatness, and it's working. Our kids have performed on global stages and even traveled to Germany. But what's amazing is how they are using their experience to fuel their creativity. They are writing scripts, telling their own stories, and expressing themselves in powerful ways. I have had the honor of directing their work, and it's been incredible to see them push themselves to be great. Last year's project was a testament to their resilience, and this year's piece is a true showcase of their growth. I believe that with my guidance, that these individuals will become so bright and shine and become the future leaders that we have hoped for. They are so unique, they are so talented, and with my work, I am so honored to be part of their journey, to be part of their story as well. Gabong.
So that was Sibahle, who I mentioned previously works predominantly with the Windybrow Arts Centre. Hopefully she will join us a little later this evening and contribute some more to our conversation. If you were part of Performing the World last year, you would have seen the Windybrow Arts Centre actually perform live as their offering and involvement with Performing the World. So continuing to introduce our panelists, I would now like to go to Tsholofelo Shounyane, who's going to talk about some of the work that she does in South Africa and working with arts to tackle perhaps social issues and work within the community. Hi, Tsholo.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tsholofelo Shounyane, and I work for Assitej, South Africa. A lot of the work that we do is quite similar to what Sibikwa does, but just a little bit differently. I don't know, Alison, should I be sharing my presentation here now, or we will do that a bit later?
Des, I think if you can pull up the PowerPoint so we can run through that.
I think I should do that, yeah, so that... Can I share it?
I think it's coming.
Oh, there it is. All right, so We have been working very closely with the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund on what is called the Girl Power Project. And that is trying to create awareness and activism in schools using an arts-based method to create awareness around gender-based violence. Next slide. All right, so Assitej is dedicated to the artistic, cultural, and educational rights of children and young people across the globe. And we advocate on behalf of all children, regardless of their background, education, ethnicity, class, you name it, to be able to access the arts. So we are one of over 100 Assitej offices in the world. And we have been running for about what, a little over 15 years. And yes, that is what Assitej is, a theatre network to bring together artists, children, teachers, parents, producers, anyone who is dedicated to making sure that children have access to the arts, that they watch the arts, that they participate in the arts, and somehow the arts touches their lives. Next slide. Next slide. Yes. So we have 4 areas of focus among many. Number 1 is to create access. So this is where we try as best as we can through our events or our campaigns or our collaborations with our members to create access for all kinds of children to be able to be part of the arts. So whether it is that they take part in the arts by way of observing, so watching theater for young people, or taking part in events that help them create their own work, thereby making theater by young people for young people. Support and develop. So this is where we run trainings for artists, where we have residencies for artists, where we try as best as we can to help artists that are working for children. So be they writers, be they directors, be they dancers. What kind of opportunities can we create for them to be able to grow in their work? Sometimes we see theater for children as the ugly stepsister of real adult theater, and we're trying to kind of do away with that, because children's theater in and of itself is its own niche market and has its own ways of working. And so trying to conscientize artists around why theater for children is important, where can they get support, and how can they grow in their work. Engaging education. We have quite a lot of projects that we are running in schools that are supportive of the curriculum. Caryn said something very important earlier about how in our schools we don't have a lot of teachers that are trained within the arts. And when they find themselves teaching the arts, it is either because they were not performing in whatever subject, or we find the teachers that do teach the creative arts kind of feel a bit rejected and unimportant, and most importantly, very lost, because they don't know what's going on. And at the end of the year, they have to produce results. They have to produce, evidence of knowledge sharing and all of that. And so we run quite a few programs where we try to help teachers upskill themselves and know exactly what to do in the classroom with learners, what the curriculum says, and how they can add to their knowledge and their learning in experiential ways, right? So that first of all, they are able to do their jobs, but also again, to spark that love of the arts, to spark the understanding for why this subject is important. That is also not just for, a lot of teachers, you'll hear them saying things like, the children who are not academic, they do very well in the arts. And while I understand where they're coming from, I think that is a bit of a misconception. I think all children, whether they're going to become scientists or become janitors or become teachers or whatever it is that they're going to become, their experience with the arts is important. And I think the impact of teachers while they're still young is very important in this area. Connect and advocate. Again, seeing how we can connect theaters with artists, how we can connect schools with shows, how we can connect all these different kinds of people that seem to be working in very different spaces, but are brought together by children and are brought together by their love of education and arts education with children. So those are the four pillars of Assitej. I think I'm skipping over my time, but let me try to be fast. Next slide. Next slide again. I will not go into philosophy. Economy of words is not my thing. Next slide. Next slide again. So one of the major projects that we're having now, please go back to the first slide. One of the major projects we're having now is with the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund. And like I said, that is around creating awareness for around gender-based violence. So, oh, we moved very fast. Can we go back to slide number 4, number 5, number 6, please? So while we're getting there, so violence against adolescent girls and young women is a very deep-rooted issue in South Africa. As we speak, there's a very big campaign. You'll see a lot of South African women have changed their profile pictures to purple to create awareness around. Yes, it's not my forte. To create awareness around gender-based violence and how it's linked to social, economic, and cultural factors. And so we've partnered with the Nelson Mandela with the goal in mind to address GBV in an experiential arts-based approach where we've included professional productions that are contextualized for certain communities, child-led productions that are created hand in hand with learners, and workshops that enable reflection and dialogue around learning around this very, very big concept. Next slide. We are working in 5 provinces at the moment: the Free State, Limpopo, Western Cape, KZN, and Eastern Cape. Next slide. We have a very big dream with this. And what I mean by that is that though we're a small organization, we have tried to reach as many people as we can in this project. So we are now in year 2 of the project that will end at the end of March. And so, yeah, we have reached in year 1 over 3,000 learners. In year 2, we will be doing the same. We have a lot of we have professional productions, we have child-led productions. We also have workshops for communities and teachers. Our methods of data collection are varied. We have interviews, we have surveys that need to be filled out. We have face-to-face kind of dialogues. And we try all of these different methods to collect data because what we found is that not a lot of our children can read for understanding. So that's also one of the major issues in our country, that it's very difficult sometimes to collect information in a written way because first of all, we have so many different languages and children learning in so many different languages, but outside of them learning in different languages, reading and writing, no matter what language, seems to be quite a challenge in our country. Next slide. And next slide, and next slide. So one of our major ways to impart this information is firstly starting with our community and artist workshops. So we get the community members along with artists, along with teachers who are working in these schools to be part of workshops where we bring awareness to them regarding community policing forums, child protection forums, and gender-based violence in their community. A lot of the times when we go into these workshops, it's quite interesting to find out what people know about gender-based violence and what they don't know about gender-based violence. And then from there, we can find how we can fill in these gaps. From there, we have professional productions. This year, we moved on to a production called Nompilo, which was done in collaboration with the South African Council of Judges for Women. Sorry, it's a very, very long acronym, but yes. And so we wrote a play that was directed at primary schools, to not only teach children about their rights, but to kind of give them an idea of the processes that they would be going through were they to find themselves in such a situation. I think a lot of children have no idea about how the justice system works, and I think adults as well have no idea how the justice system works. So the project was seeking to guide children on their journey towards healing by immersing them in the stages of what may unfold after a traumatic event. Who are the characters that they may meet? What is the role of all of these characters up until such a time when, you know, justice prevails, or sometimes in this country does not always prevail. So let me just try to cut it here. That at current we have been able to move around 3 provinces. We are going to Limpopo, where in a lot of our provinces we have to adapt language, we have to kind of adapt style, we have to adapt what we are doing to the culture of the place, right? You go to rural Limpopo and it's completely different to how you would do things in Soweto, completely different to how things are done in KZN. And so that's also been quite a journey of learning for us, how different spaces require different things from us, and require different ways of doing things. But yeah, we'll unpack more of this conversation as we go along. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Cholo. I love what you did there in terms of a really sort of umbrella sort of introduction to the work that Assitej does, and also in this very specific project, which is using the arts to address kind of social issues. And I definitely want to come back to this because I think it's really important in the communities we're working in to look at the issues and the challenges which are being presented by those communities. So last but definitely not least, I would love to come to Thembile Tshuma, who's also going to introduce himself and some of his work and give us an overview of where he is. I believe you're in Uganda, Thembile, and the work that you're doing there, but I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chulu, for that introduction, because I also work for Assitej South Africa, and I believe that you heard what Chulu was saying, and we work together in the field. And also, just to mention that at Assitej South Africa, I am an education officer, coordinator, and we really deal in education, but I have an extension of what I do. So just to briefly tell you about what I am doing here, I am doing also education work, which is a project that we are linking with the University of Columbia in the US, and we're literally looking at how best can we be able to look at education in refugee settlement. Where I'm currently at is called Changwali settlement, which is in southern part of Uganda. And we have I have looked at how the education system in South Africa works and how it is also working here in Uganda, and looking at how education system changed in the 1997, and also in Uganda it also changed in the year 2000. And their focus was also really about incorporating arts. So we have CAPS in South Africa, which is the curriculum assessment policy statement. In the year 2000 in Uganda, it changed to CAPE, which is CAPE, which is the Creative Arts and Physical Education. So there are those similarities, and how all these like two different countries really changed from the way things were done in terms of banking system. Like the teacher is the superior, and the learner is the receiver. And looking at what they have been wanting to implement in this education system is literally the same. But we are also, these two countries are also really have almost the same challenges that they're having in terms of really what these two curriculums want to bring into the country, and also how the creative arts is deemed as one of the things that will bring in creativity in the schools, will bring in more of physicalities in terms of using arts as a method, and this is exactly what these two curriculums are fighting for. But there is a lot that needs to be done with South Africa from 1997 to now, with Uganda from 2000 to now. There are similarities in those, so I have like over the years really looked at how education systems, be it in South Africa, be it in Zimbabwe, be it in Botswana, where I've also worked in, be it in Malawi, be it in, I've like really looked at how these policies have been tried to put in place, but nothing really has changed over the past 10 or more years. So my interest has always been education. How do you bring in creativity in education? How I have worked with a lot of teachers, over 300 teachers that I've worked with in the past 2 to 3 years. And if I look at like the past 10 years, I've worked with more than 10,000 teachers, but in the creative arts, the thing is, most of the teachers, they think that we are bringing creative arts into their spaces, but really looking at, no, we are not bringing creative arts or training future artists, but we are literally training creatives in all fields, like Chudo was saying, creative doctors, creative um, wherever the field that they will end up in, so that's where my interest has always been, in like how creative can we be, but bringing in most of the things that we think about, resilience, think about well-spoken people, and thinking about how then can we create a creative society. I think I'll end it there for now.
Thank you, Thembile. I love the perspective that you've brought to this conversation about working across borders and looking at curriculums and how, has there been change? We see it in some aspects, but I think at the topic of this talk is we're really always working to fill those gaps and to find ways to ensure that we are making sure there is access for all. So I've been hearing a lot in our panelists' opening introductions. I've been hearing training and development, support for young people, participation, ways to create inclusivity, access, developmental pathways. I was really interested in what Tsholo was saying around using the arts to address trauma, using the arts to support young people to find their voices. Thembile mentioned working in, the kind of refugee area and situations where there is a lot of, I suppose a lot of trauma, but a lot of loss, and perhaps a lot of very instability about the future. And I think where we find ourselves all in this messy world, there's a lot of that at the moment. I would like to pose a question to the panel now, picking up on something that Caryn mentioned earlier. And I'm not sure if Sibahle is in the room. If she is, I would also like to invite her responses to this question as well. But Caryn spoke very briefly about creating an ecosystem. And I think it's what Thembile is kind of getting at as well with his idea of working in a number of countries. But my question is, what are the ways in which we are filling the gaps, or the ways in which we are creating these ecosystems? And if it helps the panelists, perhaps if we can think of a very specific example or a story you could share about a project you have been on, where you felt there was a way in which the arts and all your work in communities kind of ensured that access or supported that ecosystem. I don't know if there's someone, Tsholo, you'd like to go first? Excellent.
So I think with specifically the project that I've just spoken about now, the Girl Power Project, that it's not just us artists coming into schools and, you know, spreading our message of wonder and peace and then leaving. But we're trying to create these communities of practice where the schools have strong relationships with, you know, what one province calls rapid response teams, with the community policing forums, with the child protection forums, that when there are school meetings, that these people come and listen to what is happening in the schools in their community, so that the schools are not operating as an isolated system. The police are not operating as an isolated system. The community workers and organizations who are doing the arts are not working as an isolated system. But through these workshops, we try to find a way to bridge the gaps between all of these. So to say, okay, we're all doing our different things, but what is it that brings us together, and how can we come together to tackle this problem? So I'll make an example, and maybe it's not the prettiest example, but it kind of shows the impact of the work. That in a couple of provinces where we had been traveling now, through the play, the children were able to come forward, you know, to the actors themselves to say, I have been having such and such a problem at home. This is a real situation at home. I don't know how to talk to my teacher. I don't know how to talk to someone else. Then we kind of become that bridge between the child and the school. From there on, we make connections with the school, we do follow-ups with the school, so that we can see if what we're doing is really working. Are we making an impact? Is reporting going up? Do teachers feel like they can handle these kind of topics? Do community members feel like they can participate with the schools when something goes wrong or before something goes wrong? So yeah, it's not just about creating all of these performances with children and creating all this, you know, beautiful art for them to understand, but also giving them, or, you know, unpacking with them what tools are available that we can use that can work in our favor. There's no money, maybe there's no governmental support, or whatever the case is, but we have support among each other. And I think that's been, yeah, that's been a very important part of the project for me, that there's actually something happening after all of this that we leave behind. Yeah.
So particularly with the gender-based violence program, which uses the arts to equip artists and take shows to schools and gets the learners to create their schools, there is a ripple effect of the gender-based violence, or the anti-gender-based, you know, violence message into those communities. So there is a kind of a reaction where the learners feel empowered either to speak out or to take that message further. So in a way, the ecosystem you're creating is the organizations working together, but also the impact of the learners feeling empowered to raise their voices as well. Fantastic. Caryn, can we come back to you? Oh, Thembile, would you like to respond to maybe what Tsholo said?
You can go.
No, it's fine. Okay, no, that's fine. Because I think just to add on what Tsholo was saying, it's really about the work that I've been doing, not just here in Uganda right now, because it's something that came back again, working with schools in the Northern Cape in South Africa, where you can be able to see what we call the community of practice, right? We've been seeing the challenges. We've been seeing how teachers have been struggling in schools, trying to implement creative arts and stuff. But to be honest, teachers have been struggling because they don't have the knowledge, right? And there's less training, like Caryn said. There are no training for the teachers. But what I've seen is teachers being able to take in most of these trainings and being able to go like, well, I think there's another teacher from another school who grasped it. So finding common ground where teachers can be able to also now start having those conversations and saying, well, I think you are good in visual arts. I think you are good in this. And I think you have grasped that. How best can we be able to have those conversations, before class times, have, share knowledge of what you are doing in your school. What are you doing good in your school? Because I believe you have this kind of thing that's going on, So for me, it's that ripple effect of not just having these trainings, but also share knowledge. And it's also happening right now here in Uganda, where teachers came and said, well, we are hearing that something is happening in another school. Can we also have that opportunity to share and see what is happening there? What are we missing? So that kind of conversation, I think it's something that needs to go beyond just the training, but between the teachers themselves as well. Thanks.
So the teachers are coming together to support each other. If one is stronger in one discipline, they can work together, but also that there's the feeling of, if that school has it, we want it too. So it's kind of this ripple effect of ecosystem connecting and saying, how do we also want this, seeing that and saying it's something that we want. So it's also that kind of requesting for activism for it. Caryn, I'd love to come to you talking about ecosystems.
Yeah, and I don't want to, I feel like it's going to be a little bit of a repeat of what Tsholofelo and Thembile have said, because I think that that's actually the power and the purpose of the arts, is to bring people together, is to cross over borders, is to build this kind of agency and understanding of ownership of future. And I think that particularly interestingly, because education has always been used as a political tool, whether it was a tool to keep a certain group of people in a very particular space, or whether it was a tool to intentionally exclude a certain group of people from an economy, or whether it was a tool to divide. I mean, I think that everybody understands, and I think particularly people who want to misuse power completely understand the power of knowledge and education, and to remove that privilege from people or that right from people is a very intentional, systemic choice. So I think that when we are talking about ecosystem, we are completely talking about the ecosystem that Tsholofelo is talking about, of multiple, various different stakeholders coming together and looking at education beyond the classroom. And I think that we are also talking about the ecosystem of building qualified, capable, passionate people that are kind of going to come together to take this forward. But I also think that we are talking about an ecosystem that includes political structures that can either help us to advance a different, better education than the one we've had before. And then policy comes into play very deeply there. And I think that the more we are able to expand the type of education that young people are receiving, that, as Tsholofelo was saying, that brings an understanding of law and rights and responsibility, and brings an understanding of process, that's the kind of other part of the ecosystem that can be shifted by the actual people for who this is for. So that the education, as Thembile was talking about, and Tsholofelo, is context specific, is relevant to the life of the people who this education is for, and that it is not this imposed external school of knowledge that we know in our history and in the history of the world has sometimes been very incorrect and infactual. So by kind of bringing young people in, building their understanding of their own power and agency and spaces where they can build their knowledge, then allows them to actually participate in what the policy around a future education could look like, that is more suited particularly for a decolonialized African continent.
Thank you. I'm seeing Cholo's hand, so I'm going to come back to her.
Sorry, was that for me?
Yes.
I just wanted to thank you, Ali. I just wanted to comment, and maybe it's a bit of a short left, on what Caryn said about power and agency. I think in this conversation of building communities of practice, it's also the conversation of building a culture. So I think here in South Africa, and it's something that I like to talk about a lot, that we view culture or the creation of culture as this old ghost from the past, right? We don't feel like we can be part of creating a new culture. Sometimes it feels like the conversation is always about preserving the old. And while I'm very happy about that, Africa is a very dynamic place. Culture in itself all over the world is very dynamic. And it is created by the people who live it. You know, there's one old man who used to like to say that history is not what is written in a book. History is how the people live every day. And so whether we like it or not, we are creating cultures. And I think what we're doing with children is trying to consciously create that. What kind of men and women and, you know, other kinds of genders are we wanting to create? What kind of living spaces are we wanting to create? What kind of relationships between people are we trying to create? And I think that's one of the things that I'm really pushing for, that we don't speak about our cultures and our traditions and our way of life as if it's some old thing that we have to be loyal to for forever, but that just like people from the past created their own cultures, we need to know that we have the autonomy to do the same. And that we need to start it with children so that by the time they get to our age, they also don't feel trapped by old ideas. Yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
Thank you, Cholo. I can see that comment got a lot of ripples, creating little ecosystems in the chat. But I think you're absolutely right. I think we tend to think of culture as fixed and immovable, when in actual fact, I think the reality is it's more fluid. And whatever you are experiencing or learning, or the people or the languages you're interacting with, become part of that culture that you are creating. And I think what's very important for all of us on this panel is that we are creating cultures for young people which include the arts, and which very much are saying, even though our policy has kind of said that in South Africa, there are still these gaps and these spaces where there is a lack of access to learning. And there are still huge challenges. I mean, I love that we had Sibahle's video, because I think it really showed the hardships of the Windybrow community of Hillbrow, an area which is really stricken by systemic violence, you know, historical poverty, and to have a space, an oasis like the Windybrow, which is a place of hope and access and art education, is really, really powerful for those children. And I agree. I think the most important thing we can do is think about how do we create, how do we shift culture, which I think ties in really beautifully to the theme of the whole performing the world, which is meandering the mess. You know, how do we shape things in a culture, there we go, in a world which is so messy and so fragile. Yeah, so I love that we have kind of had a conversation which has led to that, because what I would love to do now is open it up to our audience for questions, for engagement, for discussion. I can see there's been a lot of stuff in the chat. I'm not sure if there are more comments which are coming out from the chat, or if someone has a burning question and they would like to raise their hand and we can come to them. Des and the tech team, I might need your help in identifying hands because I can't see everyone.
People would like to raise their hands.
If you have a burning question for one of our panelists or all of us.
You have a question from Jan Wooten?
Yeah, hi. This was so such a beautiful conversation. I've learned so much, and I think it was the first time that I heard someone say, we don't just teach artists to be creatives, we're teaching a society to be creative. And I wonder if you could all say a little bit more about that. And going back to the theme of this morning about each of us being a multitude of skills and talents and artistry and beauty, and, you know, say more, because it's very striking what you're doing.
Who would like to tackle that one? Tsholo? And Thembile. Let's go with Tsholo, then we'll come to Thembile.
Me and my big mouth again. So I think for me, in our work, one of the most powerful things for me has been seeing the transformation of teachers, right? In a lot of our work, we train teachers, like I say, who have never come into contact with the arts before, or it's been so long since they've done any artistic thing. And in our workshops, we don't have, you know, teachers just sitting there and we relay the information and they write in a notebook. No, they have to literally experience the lessons that they're going to do with learners in the classroom. They have to, you know, feel them. They have to do all of these things that they expect children to do, because how are we going to, first of all, teach what we ourselves have not at least come into contact with a few times? And I think one of the highlights from coming from those workshops, and not just with teachers, but, you know, with other community members as well, to say, I didn't know I could do this, or this has opened up my understanding. Like, oh, I used to think that this was so difficult and I couldn't get it, or it was just for a special kind of people. But I did it. I actually can do it. One of the men who was a teacher, he was about to retire, and we were doing portraits, and he was drawing. This was in KZN, and we were drawing, you know, portraits of faces. And his drawing came out very beautifully. And the thing he said was, I haven't touched a pencil since I was in my 20s. I haven't drawn since I was in my 20s. And for the first time in many decades, I feel alive. I feel like I've connected with a part of me that I had forgotten about, that I had buried, that I had lost. And to watch adults come alive just as beautifully as when children get something right for the first time. I think we downplay how important that is for people to feel capable, and how the arts are empowering in that way. How the arts create access and give us a language for things that we didn't necessarily have a language for, or let us sit in feelings that we were avoiding a little bit before without it being too confrontational. That the arts create kind of a soft landing place for whatever other things we come with from outside. So I think for me, that has been one of the most rewarding things, to see not adults become children again, but see why what they are doing is important, why their contribution to this world is important, how it impacts children, and how it also changes their own lives. Yeah.
Thank you. Thembile, you also wanted to respond.
Yes. I think with most people that I've worked with is really about, they say I'm a prophet of the arts, because I've always been saying, we are teaching you how to use arts as a methodology, but the fact is, for real, like Chulu was saying, you see the transformation through the teachers before it even ripples to the actual learners that they will be engaging with. You see them owning, that kind of ownership of, this is what I've done, this is what I've, so for me, that transformation of, I have this ownership of my own thing that I've done. I'm free enough to express myself. I am free enough to do anything. We play games of, I made a mistake, then everyone were like, yeah, that kind of thing. And being able to say, you can make mistakes in life. This is how life is. So it's the creative arts really broadens their minds and stuff. Even the old people that we train, the old teachers that we train, they really go like, I think I'm going back to being a young person, to rethink my own life. If I was that young and being able to express myself this way, being able to engage with other teachers, because sometimes teachers are like in a box and don't want to engage with others, but at the end of everything, they are really engaging with themselves and stuff, and say, I would have been a better person. I would have been a better human being. I would have been, and can I take this to my kids? And I believe that they can be better human beings. It's not about just being artistic, being a good, scribbler, being a good actor, but how does arts transform you to be able to live and be a leader, and being able to communicate and being able to engage with the world itself, and block these gaps that we're talking about right now. Just so, like, how can we bring that closer to the South and the whole community?
Thank you, Thembile. Caryn, do you want to add to the original question?
Yes, I think that in listening to Thembile and Solo, what's making me think about is really the skills and the value of arts for people who participate in it. So within the actual discipline of the forms, so because, in theater, a lot of the work, and in dance, a lot of the work is about ensemble work. So it kind of builds these skills of, how do I relate to other people? How do we manage conflict in a space? In music, you are needing to work with timing. So, and in theater, there's a discipline around being on time, about being responsible to others in the group. And most importantly, I think that as we get older and the mess of the world kind of becomes more real and apparent to us, I think that we stop dreaming. And I think that one of the key things about the arts is that it reminds us to dream again and to use our imaginations. And I think that that's where innovation comes from, is through imagination. And if we are thinking about how the world will change and how we will not be stuck in practices that didn't work for centuries and centuries, it requires us doing something differently. And doing something differently means thinking in a different way, and being more critical about certain things, and being more reflective, and being more internally kind of aware and responsive to the mess. And I think that that's something that's very unique that the arts provides. And as we are talking about that, it is not just an artist that needs to be able to do all of these things and to kind of achieve all of these skills that the arts allows. You need leaders that are empathetic and that are thinking about the other person and thinking about better ways of managing conflict. We need doctors that are able to talk to people in a way that that is more relatable and relevant to that community. We need engineers that are thinking about creative ways of spatial design and architecture that bring people together rather than separate them. So yeah, that was what I wanted to add.
Thank you, Caryn. I mean, just imagine if our politicians had some imagination. I think it would be
Imagine.
very different world. Carrie, I can see your hand.
Thank you.
Please.
Actually, I often think how transformative it would be if the U.S. Congress was willing to play I Made a Mistake.
Imagine.
Thank you all. I also really appreciated Jen's question. I was feeling similarly about so often arts education gets talked about as finding the talented few and not as a transformative activity. I'm trying to formulate my question. So you're sitting in a room of people from all over the world, all of whom have an interest in the relationship between the arts and social change and development. And I know you probably were not able to be here, but we just came from a session of Playing for Change's music schools across the world and in Africa and Latin America and many places. And my question is, are there things we could, what would you like to do with all those people? Are there ways being further connected, or maybe you already are internationally? Are there offers you want to make, people could make? I'm not asking like, oh, we need this, but although that's fine too, but more, how do you think about this from a, what does the world need perspective? And when I say, how do you think about this, it could be you don't, and that's absolutely fine too.
Does anyone want to tackle that? What I do want to say, Carrie, sorry, I'll come to you, Thembile and Caryn, is that I think Tsholo, and I'm not sure who it is, I just saw the messages popping up, have already connected about, for example, a project and an idea sparking another idea. So I think it's kind of already happening in the room, which is
so that's part of what I'm trying to keep sparking in addition. So I'm not saying it isn't happening. I'm saying it from a vantage point, let's talk about that if there are things to talk about around that.
Thembile, you were keen to jump in?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in. I think it begins with the people who are here to take it out there. But I always say in short, go back and play. That's like one of the main things that I normally say. We tend to come to spaces and be old people, right? And when we come in spaces as old people, we don't have dreams, we don't have inspirations, we don't have, but as human beings, can we come back to our young selves and have inspirations and have dreams and play more, so that's my 2 cents that I can give.
Caryn, did you want to add? And then I'll come to you.
And to add to what Thembile was saying, I was going to say to play with others and to talk with others. One of a project that came to mind as you were talking, Carrie, was that we recently did a youth cultural exchange co-creation project between South African youth and Flemish youth. And there was so much learning that happened just from them talking to each other. We didn't even travel physically. Everything was done online. But there's something so special about talking about difference and kind of unpacking assumptions and learning from each other, even if our contexts are very different. And sometimes we find that there's actually more in common than we thought. And sometimes we find that there are really important learnings in the difference. But I really think that cross-border conversations and engagements between all people, but in our case, particularly between young people, is really important for growing and understanding that there is a bigger world outside of the little world that we are in. and that we have a contribution to make, and that we can learn and engage with each other.
Thanks, Caryn. Tsholo, I think you wanted to add something too.
Yes, thank you. Just to add to what Caryn is saying, I think for me the big thing is connecting versus networking, right? And not to say networking is bad. I think it's wonderful, but I think it also has agenda. I don't know what English to use, but I think what is important is to speak to one another on a human level, right? I think this thing of getting to know one another, not just what we do in the arts, but just us as people. When we walk into a room, who are we as the individuals, and what communities are we coming from, and what kind of people are we? And we may complain a lot about, we're always on our phones, we're always online, we're always on. And I mean, if that's the world that we're going into, then everything has its pros and cons. There's a very big advantage. Here I am with about 45 people in the room from different parts in the world, and I have an opportunity to meet people I would have never met before. I have an opportunity to talk to people now in ways that I would have never before. And I think that's very advantageous because what the internet has shown me is that people are not as different as they think they are, right? We're not as different as we believe we are. And the more we talk is the more we find that out. The second thing that I think is important, Caryn mentioned, our youth getting in touch with youth from other places. But I think what's also important is intergenerational conversations. We miss out on a lot there. When we do a lot of separating of, the directors will sit there, the adults will sit there, the children will sit there. We don't have enough things where we bring everyone into the room, including some of our after school, programs where I would have loved to see parents become part of what we're doing, and not just as observers, but as active participants, so that they can get a taste and a feeling of where they're leaving their children every week or every month or every few days. What is it that is actually happening? And they can feel for themselves the feelings that their children get. And their children can also learn that their parents are also growing up, that adults are still growing up. It's only now when I'm 38 that I realized, oh, shucks, my mom didn't know what the hell she was doing. She was growing up. So was my father. And they're still growing up. They're going through all of these things. The mother my mother was to my older brother is completely different to the mother that she is to me because of circumstance and growing up and different kinds of children. And she's a completely different mother to my younger brother. So she's also constantly growing up all the time. And if we can bring ourselves closer to one another so that we can see that, so that we can see it live in action and understand one another a bit better.
Thank you, Tsholo.
Thank you all.
I'd like to take this moment to welcome Sibahle. I can see you in the room, and I'm so glad. Sibahle is our fourth panelist, everyone. We're delighted that you could make it. Do you want to hop on and give your 2 cents? Welcome.
Yes, most definitely. Hi, everyone. Apologies. I just come from a performance, so I'm still drenching in sweat. I love this conversation because it shows it's exactly who I am and what I am. So the first thing that I actually would have, I think we also need to be kind to ourselves as creatives, is that we actually grew up in a system that didn't allow us to question, didn't allow us to speak up, did not allow us to stand tall and be confident. And right now, my biggest motivation, or my biggest thing that's driving me, is to then speak up, is to not be afraid to create, not be afraid to question, And another way of working together is young people. So I'm situated at the Windybrow Arts Centre in Hillbrow. Mind you, the place that I'm in, the reputation is so bad. These kids are surrounded by dilapidated buildings that are breaking down. They're surrounded by crime. They're surrounded by gunshots. It's something that they're so used to. And you'll be shocked what they can do with just a pen. and if you give them a pen and a paper. We underestimate and just look at, obviously times have changed, things have like gone forward, technology has taken over, but we at Windybrow, with Stacey Hardy, I've been working with Stacey Hardy, we tried something. We were like, let's use a French play, let's work with something that they don't know. Amy Césaire's beautiful long poem called Return to My Native Land. And let's bring it to these kids. Let's see what they would do with it. And I tell you, you'll be shocked if I was to present the script to you and say, this is actually what they've written. Giving them that pen and a paper allowed them to be creative, allowed them to question what's happening around them, which then looks at us and we can then look at the ones before us to say, oh, wow, we have failed these young ones. And therefore integrating with what Tshulu is saying, that having each other together in one room. So no hierarchy of director or this person. Let's work together, because I learn a lot from these young ones. Their poems in which they write, their writings are so amazing and so impactful to watch. So as much as you may see them on their cell phones, but just giving them this and this, which is something that we haven't obviously haven't been looking at because of technology, is going to shock you. It's really going to shock you. So I'm going back to the ways of reading, teaching them how to read, teaching them how to, showing them, okay, you can write this. What are your thoughts? Let me help you translate them here. And then from here, let's see how you can create this. And that's exactly what we've been doing, at Windybrow Arts Centre, working with these young people and say, what can you put on a piece of paper? Let me show you. Also speaking back to the fact that using art, one thing about art is that we need to understand there's no mistake. Everything is right in art. There's no wrong answer. That's the best thing about art, is us understanding that there is no wrong answer. Let's get into a space. One sound can then become a whole something, can create change, can be that voice in that engineer space, just because of that one sound, So yeah, those are my 2 cents that I like to share. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Sibahle. I know there are a few hands still, but I am really conscious of time, because I know we can't run over, unfortunately, because we have another session coming.
We have a little bit of time. We have about 5 to 7 minutes.
Shall I take one more question and then just quickly wrap it all up? Great. I think Rita, you had a hand.
Yeah, thank you, Alison. Nice to meet everybody. What a wonderful panel. I've got a question for Tsholofelo and Thembile. I run an organization in Nigeria that's currently running a project that uses the performing arts to sensitize people about child domestic work and the exploitation in that regard. And so we are touring with stage plays in schools and in communities. And we are engaging with adults across communities. And of course, doing this kind of work, like you're doing the work on GBV, you're working with different partners as well, who are not necessarily integrated or understand the role of play and performance or see its value. And you were talking about the community of practice, which is necessary for the kind of work that we do when it comes to advocacy around children. And I wanted to find out whether you experience similar challenges and how you've been able to navigate through it, particularly in trying to introduce adults, especially those who lost their childhood, about the power of play and performance.
So I think what's important is showing people what you mean, right? In the theater or in film, we like to say, why tell you if I can show you? And I think that has been the most powerful tool for us, that if we want the community policing forums and the rapid response teams and the child protection forums and the social workers and the principals and all of these people to understand what we do, we must create workshops for them to be able to understand. We must bring them into the room. We must bring them into contact with the information and how we spread this knowledge and how we disseminate this information, because a lot of the times you may find people may be a little bit negative or cold to what you're doing, not because they don't like the arts, or yes, maybe there may be ideas that the arts are frivolous, but that's because of either rumors or past experience and not maybe necessarily from their own real thoughts. So the minute you get them into a room and help them experience something, then maybe for the first time they start having their own thoughts about something. For the first time they start seeing it differently, feeling it differently, experiencing it differently. But yeah, word of mouth doesn't always work as well as we would like it to. And where it has worked, it was where the teachers or the people who had been in our workshops went and told other people about them. And then other people come to us and say, oh, and teacher so and so, or this school, or this organization, or these people had this experience. Would you be able to come to us and give us the same experience? So I think, yeah, doing is what helps people understand more than reading or talking or anything like that. I say invite them into your practice, invite them to have their own workshops that are related to their own work. So maybe they may not understand how the arts are powerful in another area of work, but try to make them understand how the arts are powerful in their area of work, where it's closer to them. And then people, start understanding a bit better and there's less resistance. I don't know if Thembile wants to add there.
No, thanks, Chulu. Yeah, I think with the workshops that I've been having in different provinces, we've been having workshops with our other partners who don't use arts-based methodologies. And after our sessions, they really appreciate that. And because they go through the experience, so like Chulu was saying, experience it, then you can be able to attest to it that this is how I felt and this is how it moved me or shifted me. And we're talking of people who have been in this industry for the past 20 years or 30 years, but just having that 2-day workshop, then they go like, I it never hit me this way, so I just believe in the power of the art to experience and to be able to question, like Sibahle was saying, and to be able to explore and be able to come up with your own physicalized solution. And yeah, so yeah, that's where I can stop.
Thank you so much. There's a question on time. Can we do one little parting shot from each member of the panel, or do we need to wrap it up?
Yes, we can. Yes. Yep.
Fantastic. So I would like to invite, I know Sibahle came in and shot her shot, but I'm going to invite everyone just to have one more kind of, just a parting thought or a kind of message about connection or how to keep filling these gaps and making sure that we continue to play and dream. I'm going to ask Caryn if she can start, because she's been a bit quiet in the last conversation.
I was actually still trying to think. Yeah, I think that what's landing for me as really important is listening, is inviting into the conversation. I probably, just because I saw Tsholofelo's comment about not having conversations about young children without them being as part of the conversation. And I think that's really important across the board when we are talking about ecosystems of education and arts education, is that everybody needs to be in the room. And how can we find the ways to do that? And then once we are all there, to be able to listen and to be able to allow space for everybody to have a say. and kind of break the barriers and break the hierarchies of the power dynamics of the past. And also, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Caryn. Thembile, can I come to you?
Thank you, Ali. I think one thing that comes to me is one of the programs that you introduced me to, Arts Inside Out. It's really about connection. So connection, using arts to connect to the inner self so that you can be able to connect to the external world. So the word that comes to mind is connection, but using arts to connect with the inner self and the whole world. Thanks.
Thank you. Tsholo. I think you're still muted.
Was
there we
that
go.
for me?
Yeah, just your parting shots, parting thoughts.
I think I've had many thoughts, but my most important takeaway from this is, again, having more of these conversations. And again, like I say, connecting on that human level, not just about the projects, not just about the funding, not just about ticking the boxes of what we have to report at the end of the year or at the end of the funding cycle, but how this really impacts us as human beings and why it is important for the world that we're trying to create. There's an African proverb that says, what he who plants the tree and takes care of it is not going to eat of its fruit or whatever. And I guess, keeping that thing in mind, that a lot of the work that we're doing now may only really have the impact that we hope for once we are gone. But what we're doing now is just as important as what will happen then. And if we can just keep that in mind as we keep going with all of our work, that all of it is worth it. All of it is worth it.
Thank you, Tsholo. And Sibahle just joined us and now we have to go, but please leave us with some inspiring words.
The first one is, playing is not foreign to us. We've played before. So it's okay to make a mistake, and playing can allow you and will help you learn. So learn, play to learn, and learn to play. That's all I can share. And thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I can see some of the thank yous coming up in the chat. Thank you to our amazing panel. Thank you to Performing the World. Thank you to the audience from all over the world. And I'm going to leave you also just saying, I think it's very important that we are continuing to playfully grow up. Thank you so much, everyone.
Let's give everyone a final Zoom round of applause. Absolutely amazing presentation. Alison, Thembile, Tsholofelo, Caryn, Sibahle. Let's give everyone a big Zoom round of applause. Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
We're going to open up that whiteboard again. If people would like to just share their thoughts, emotions, feelings, anything that really resonated with them, we're going to open up this whiteboard and people could just draw away, type away, post things, gifts, pictures, draw. And you two are open to it also. Alison, Thembile, that's all. Caryn, Sibahle, you open to drawing this and sharing this also? This is yours too. I'm going to do this for about 2 to 3 minutes. Nice. How can I make shapes? There is a button on the side that has shapes. You'll see a circle, square, and you can make shapes with that button. going to do this for 1 more minute.
And there's also a little Post-it note. So if you want your words to be a little more neat, you can use that.
Yes.
It's sticky note, second from the bottom, I think, or third.
And take your last 30 seconds to write your final thoughts, drawings, scribbles. Yes, it is possible to share the chat, Alison. All right.
And people can also save the chat themselves at the 3 dots at the top of the chat. If you click on that, it says save chat, and it should save it for you, but that we will also be sending it out.
Yes. All right, I'm going to close the whiteboard. Thank you so much. Coming up right after this at 3 p.m. Eastern Time is Breakdance Project Uganda, Dancing Towards Human Development. So that is our next session for the day, evening, or morning, whatever time zone you are in, and we will see you in a bit. Thank you, everyone.